This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. We're thrilled today to be joined by one of our most listened to regular guests, Amber Walsh. Amber lives at the intersection of private equity and healthcare, but more than that, she's a true leader and thinks about leadership all the time. She's going to talk today about a concept related to company culture, how you work with team members, how you sort of help them thrive, and a lot more. Amber, let me tee it up and ask you to take charge and tell us what are your thoughts and what's on your mind.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I am very focused right now, and I have been for a long time, but it's very fresh for me right now, is this concept of assessing a colleague's commitment, commitment to their career, commitment to that particular company, or in our case, a law firm, and how you might create a culture that makes it okay to discuss questions, concerns around commitment long-term that that particular colleague employee may have. It's a topic that I find really interesting, but really, really challenging as a manager, because it is something that is so hypercritical for the success of the organization. There's so many different statistics, of course, around employee engagement and commitment and how that is a direct tie to the success of the organization. But I find it to be such a daunting concept because it can be so incredibly difficult to assess commitment when, in many cases, you are talking about very, very highly motivated, highly skilled, intelligent people who either, one, may believe that they want to be, in our case, in the private practice of law at a law firm like McGuireWoods, they may believe that, or even if they have personal doubts, they may also feel like they cannot reveal those doubts, and they're talented enough, frankly, to not show that they have doubts about that commitment. And that's what I find so hard as a manager. And I really have been thinking about and reading and trying to talk to others in my position about how you go about assessing that commitment and maybe creating an environment where it's okay to talk about these things, talk about the doubt, to then be able to respond to it, for managers to frankly be able to plan better, both for those colleagues, those employees, but also for their own team building.
Yes, I think it's a fascinating question. And what happens is there's so many different pieces of this. Let's take an aside, people that have been lifers at a firm into their 40s or 50s, they're likely not going any place without people knowing that they're going someplace and so forth. And then we'll come back to some of the younger age groups. And then there's people that have been at 6 different firms. And if you bet they're going to stay at your firm forever, it's probably a bad bet because they're always trying to figure out themselves and the right pasture and all those kinds of things. Then you get to the heart of this discussion, people probably in the, earlier career stage, 25 to 35, let's say, and what are 25 meaning that's the year at which people graduate from law school traditionally if they went straight through. Just again, broad thoughts on age groups, but that group, they're still in that spot where they're trying to figure out themselves whether they want to make this their long-term career or not, what they want to do, what their plans are, and many when they're first out, 25 to 27, 28, 29, at least the experience for most of us is we're still not sure ourselves what we want to do for the long run, let alone committed to the firm and the team and so forth. But your point on this, the inability to have those open discussions, even though it's very normal for somebody in that age group or a younger professional to not be sure what they want to do or they want to do it at this firm, what they want to do, but it's very hard to have those discussions. And I remember one of our colleagues, when he was 27 or so, said to me, look, I know you're starting to invest a lot of time in me, but I'm likely to move back to Charlotte no matter what we do here because that's where our family is, that's where we want to be. And it took him a lot of guts to tell me that because he knew there was a chance. He sat me down to tell me because he wanted me to know in case I wanted to stop investing time in him and building around him. And I thought it was fascinating. It took a ton of integrity and guts for him to be that open with me that he wasn't staying here no matter what for the long run. It ended up working out really, really well. But I think most young college are very scared to tell their mentors or seniors that they're thinking about other things or what they're trying to figure out because they're scared it'll have negative repercussions, that they'll stop getting work, they'll stop getting the best assignments, they'll start having people invest in them. How do you deal with some of those issues, Amber, that concern? Because that's exactly what we're talking about, is that you tell a mentor or a team leader, and the team leader starts to sort of not necessarily directly, but indirectly or not necessarily so intentionally stops viewing you as core to their team. So you sort of feel like you're out on a life raft there versus embraced because you've admitted to your boss or person you're working for that you might think about doing other things. How do you sort of deal with that and make it okay so you could do better career planning for both the person and the firm?
It's really challenging, but it starts with raising the question as the manager, inviting the conversation, making it clear, maybe when you as the manager leader yourself had doubts, and pointing out that there is still a place, you are still a valued member of the team, even if you are having doubts. And then, of course, just like any other particular challenge that you're working through as a manager, you have to have the conversation and then you have to do what you say you're going to do. So if you invite your colleagues to share with you these things, then of course you can't then create an environment where they are punished for talking to you about their doubts. You also have to protect the team and the firm. And it's a very, very delicate line, but I do think that it can be achieved. It's just one of those cultural things that has to be built on and continued to be cultivated, that we can talk about our commitments, our doubts, and when we have moments in our lives, particular things that are very natural that may cause someone to doubt their long-term commitment, that it's okay to talk about those things. Some of the saddest, most frustrating moments that I have had as a manager are the days when I realized that I got it very wrong, my assessment about someone's commitment. And that has happened so many times, but it's happening less and less. The longer that I do this, the longer that I'm managing teams, because I try to get out and talk about these things in advance and create this environment where you can be open and honest, and where someone knows that even if you have a goal of staying in the practice of law for your entire life, but maybe you want to go in-house eventually. In our world, a lot of people will want to go in with health systems or private equity-backed portfolio, whatever it is, to have a different experience. It's still really valuable to have those people on the team, to have us putting resources in that type of lawyer who openly admits it, but maybe I build a team a little bit differently with a little bit of breadth to support that person. So you have some redundancies, frankly, in institutional knowledge and in client relationships. You just plan better. And then what can happen, the more you have these conversations, the more that you have the opportunity for that person and you as the manager leader to share your own insights about their own career path. And you can just plan accordingly internally, but you have to be very honest and committed to continuing to support people who are brave enough, like our colleague who came to you and said that to you so many years ago. You have to be truthful and give that person the respect that they are due when they have given you that respect of honesty.
100%. And it is such a challenging thing because there's this period of time, 5 to 10 years in, even longer in, where the law firm and the team's trying to figure out if you're the right fit for them, the team members trying to figure out is this the right fit for them and what they want to do for their career. And most people don't come out of the womb saying, my goal is I see myself climbing the firm and becoming an equity partner, doing this, doing that, rainmaker, manager, leader, whatever it might be. It's an evolution for people to get clear about what their goals are and what they want to do. And you have to be careful to live with people through that period of time while they're trying to figure out the level of their commitment. I mean, you and I can't think of hardly anybody who's become a leader in the firm where at some point they didn't have some growing pains in trying to figure out what exactly they wanted to do with their career and how they wanted it to go. I mean, I don't know of very many people that haven't had some of those growing pains. It's just normal as a human being to not be sure all the time. This is where I want to go. This is what I want to do. This is the kind of work I want to do. It's just normal. And I think to your point, the more that you normalize and accept those discussions, the much healthier probably the environment is and everybody is.
Yeah, I agree. And at the same time, while I think it is so incredibly important to have these conversations and make sure that you have this open forum where it's not everyone sharing with everyone, but it's at least direct mentors, supervisors, supervisee, whatever is the nomenclature in your organization, at least you can have an open dialogue. While I think that is so important and probably the most impactful, I am also very interested in what the HR professionals and the headhunter community says about ways to recognize when someone's commitment may be declining, their commitment to their career or to your particular organization. I also think that's fascinating. And there's probably some combination in there, the open conversations, but also there are some interesting statistics that they will cite. I mean, they cite, different surveys that are taken based on the employee net promoter score. So the extent to which the particular employee says they are likely to recommend your organization as a place to work. There's a tracking of performance metrics over time for the individual, not just versus their colleagues, because that can be skewed because you'll have high performers who are always going to be at the top, but against themselves. And as they start to decline, what does that say? Decline relative to themselves. Colleagues whose response times drop off, who are missing deadlines, anything like that.
No, absolutely. And to your point, one of the things you've done an incredible job of, and it's harder in the virtual world that we're in, is staying so highly connected to our colleagues, and staying so connected to them. And it's harder because in the old days, you saw and talked to people every single day. And it was a little bit easier to read body language, read cues, and talk to people about, what's going on and so forth. You and I'm sure everybody has a story like this. One of our best partners, this must have been 10, 15 years ago now, came into my office and closed the door. And I said to the partner, and it's someone that you are very close to as well, I said to the partner, oh my God, you're leaving. Because that's the first time I think that this colleague who moved to Nashville to take a job in-house had ever closed the door. So I figured, oh my goodness. And of course, exactly what he was doing was giving notice that he's leaving. And what happens is, to your point, in any professional environment, there's a whole number of people that you sort of know aren't that committed, or they're moderately committed. There are those that really have been committed, are just great work ethic, great professionals. And it's particularly when one of those leaves that you don't expect that you're sort of surprised, that you're sort of, God, could we have done something different or not, or what have you? And it is what it is. But I you remember those things vividly. And as you talk about the people that you're surprised to take different paths, different choices, I'm almost never surprised by the person who came to our firm from another firm who was at the last 3 firms for 3 to 5 years each when they leave. Although there was one of them more recently that was here for several years that left, and I was surprised. The other one's not so much. But it is fascinating to try and assess where people at and to build that environment where they feel comfortable talking about it. You and I also remember one of the great colleagues we worked with. We see a lot of this in the big law firms who had a very hard time setting boundaries for herself and basically chose to go in-house just because she couldn't figure out how to set the boundaries internally, or the firm wasn't good enough about supporting those boundaries. And you see a lot of that as well. People that just they're just great professionals, but they're naturally sort of alpha or A hardworking people and can't help but put in the maximum amount of hours, even though it's not necessary for success.
All very, very true. And one of the most difficult things to figure out, but the only way that you can deal with it is to try to have conversations, try to give people what they need, try to help assess their motivations, and maybe use some of these tricks on the side that, the HR professionals measure, because that's sometimes illuminating too. But just having the conversations and doing the best we can, and it's never going to be a perfect science, but it's certainly something that we think about and focus on a lot, because in the end, that's what we are in the law firm. We are just people and teams with no hard assets and no other resources other than our talented individual.
Yeah, 100%. No, I think that's right on, and it just is the constant. Back in the day when we had in-person team meetings all the time, it seems so much easier to stay really closely connected to everybody. In today's world, it is a real effort by managers to stay closely connected to their people in a different world, a different remote world, a different everything. And it's like, I'm amazed at people like you who do it so well, but it is more challenging, it seems like, in some ways than it was. And it's not there's no way around it. We got to do it, even in a different environment, in a different world. But what a fascinating discussion. Amber, anything else you wanted to add?
No, other than I am always up for people that have tips on the best ways to figure out the commitment issue and to help our own colleagues kind of figure it out and know themselves. I love to have this conversation for people who have dealt with it and have tips.
No, just absolutely fantastic. Amber, thank you so much for joining us on the Becker Private Equity Podcast. Again, Amber Walsh, Executive Committee leader at McGuireWoods, one of our most listened to guests every single year. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Scott.